So for those of you just tuning in, my name's Ace. I'm with a company called Delta 2 Alpha. I'm sitting here today with Randy. We are up in Canada. Randy has one of the unique distinctions of serving with Canada's Tier 1 Special Forces group for how long?
16 years.
For 16 years. And we are going to discuss a few things, one of which is that it even exists. Most people within Canada don't know about it. Outside of Canada, probably even more. And there's some things that make it really unique. So we'll get into that, and we'll talk about things like selection criteria, because it's probably not all of what you think it is. Randy, how did we get to you before you joined the military? Why did you make that life choice?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, thanks for having me, Ace. This is good, man. We've been chatting for quite some time, and it's the first time we actually met in person, so this is good. Like the military, I think, was an avenue that I was interested in as a teenager. I thought law enforcement, to be honest, is where I was going to go. And then when I graduated high school, I grew up in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in the east coast of Canada. And at that time, I applied to a couple of universities. I applied to the Halifax Regional Police as well as the RCMP, and everything came back denied. So I was 19 years old, well, actually 18 years old, trying to figure out what I was going to do. My dad was a iron worker for 50 years of his life, and I thought, well, maybe I'll follow his footsteps. You know, it's hard work, but it's meaningful work, and I would follow his footsteps. And he was absolutely dead against it. So I thought the next question was, well, what do I like doing? What do I think I like doing? Didn't know much about the military, and at that time I had an uncle who was really close, and he spent 30 years in the Navy. So he took me to the recruiting center and said, hey, man, this might be something that you're interested in. So I actually applied to the Navy for a position called, at that time it was a Hull Tech, and my aptitude test scores were not high enough. And the next option was infantry. And lo and behold, joined the infantry, went to the 2nd Battalion PPCLI for about 5 years, where I really was kind of exposed to JTF2. I didn't know anything about JTF2 in the early days of the infantry.
What does JTF do for the slow learner in the room?
Sure. So JTF2 is Joint Task Force 2. It's an organization within CANTSOFCOM, which has, under the umbrella, has 4 different organizations, and that's one of the 4. And they're responsible for hostage rescue and counterterrorism.
So I guess the elephant in the room would be, what was JTF1? Just JTF.
So it was actually, funny story is JTF, the name, when the Canadian Forces took on the special operation capability, it was once organized and ran by our federal policing organization, the RCMP. So they had a hostage rescue mandate, and the capabilities, the funding, the manpower, it was then determined that the Canadian Armed Forces would take that on. So when the name was being tossed around, the Canadian Special Air Service was a title that was pitched, but for whatever reason, it got declined. And as it was called JTF, the Joint Task Force, what they were suggesting was it's open to all entities of the Canadian Armed Forces. So male, female, Army, Navy, Air Force were all welcome to try out. So that's where the name came. And the 2 represented the second entity of a hostage rescue counterterrorism mandate within Canada.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
So then I guess it would have been 2003, I did selection, which is 7 days of, as you can imagine, sometimes referred to as Hell Week, for good reason, where they put you through the paces physically, mentally, emotionally. They challenge your grit and challenge your abilities to persevere through tough times. But they also are assessing and challenging your ability to think critically, apply logic and be essentially a problem solver. So that was in 2003. I was successful, got selected, and then went on to the assaulter course. So the Special Operation Assaulter course is about a year long, where they teach you all the hands and feet of everything that has to do with being an assaulter at the Tier 1 level. So everything you can imagine. So how to shoot, tactical shooting, CQB, medical, communications, how to parachute, how to insert, extract from different variations and environments. So there's a lot to it for sure. Long program, but I got lucky and persevered through everything, and then became part of the unit. And I was there until 2019 is when I retired.
What types of soft skills does a JTF operator wind up using? Like, is there a specialization in language,
Yeah,
transactional analysis, stuff like that?
Yeah, all of it. Different personalities and different archetypes will be drawn to different subsections of the unit. So folks that have a attribute for linguistic learning, you'll see some of those guys will be very well versed in a variety of different languages. Some guys, it's not really their bread and butter, so their skills and their abilities will be utilized in other areas. As a whole, generally speaking, the entire assaulter community, there are some commonalities that they will all go through. So a baseline of assaulter capability, everything from problem solving, analytical thinking, operational planning, execution in a variety of different environments. Every assaulter gets that baseline. And then once they're in the unit, there are subsections that assaulters can find them, if they find themselves interested in one area or another, they can dive a little bit deeper into becoming a sniper, becoming some sort of climber or complex terrain operator. Divers, for example, there's a capability with the dive specialty. So there's varieties of different skill sets that guys can find themselves into. So
the JTF 2 is a lot broader of an umbrella.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that the guys have to. When I say have to, it's a mandated requirement. Right? So the federal government says we need an organization that is capable of X, Y, and Z. That's the organization that is equipped, funded, and trained to do it.
So when you left the infantry and you wound up getting kind of fully trade qualified, I guess we'll call it.
Yep.
After about a year or so in, what was the thing that you found the most shocking? That you I never knew that this was going to be this way?
With the infantry?
So going from the infantry into being trade qualified with JTF 2, you're they just leave us alone.
Yeah.
Or, right, what are some of the things that you just found, this is night and day?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The first year, so once I became an assaulter, now you're embedded with the team and you're really understanding what the unit is capable of and how the unit works. The biggest eye-opener for me was how fast things happen. I was really maybe not misunderstood, that's not the right word, but maybe wasn't as clear as I thought it was while I was in training, not really understanding yet how it actually operates and how the unit functions. And what I found really impressive, but also very eye-opening, is how fast things happen. Not just the level of training, but if a job or a deployment or a situation is unfolding abroad, for example, and the government deems that we are the solution to that problem, how quickly it goes from here's your initial notification that something is happening to actually being in that country and doing something about it was pretty impressive. That was, to me, the biggest eye-opener. How quickly from, so to speak, flash to bang, things happen.
Did you find it shocking in terms of how fast you arrived there, or how fast the logistics could spin up to get you and equipment?
Yeah.
You get a Burger King on the ground, so to speak.
Yeah, that was really impressive. And that's what I found pretty interesting, is how quickly things happen. And then also, too, just the hands and feet stuff, too. Understanding CQB, for an example. You graduate and then you're embedded into the team. It's kind of like going from junior hockey to the NHL, right? Junior hockey players, they understand the game. They're good. They're quick. They understand. They can read the play, and they know where to be on the ice. And then when they get into the NHL, they still see it. It just happens so much faster. It was very similar like that. Running CQB with a really polished team, at how quickly they're able to assess what they're seeing and then make a decision. That was pretty impressive too. The first year, I'll be honest, I felt like I was looking through toilet paper tubes when I was, kind of moving around. And then after about a year of doing it, then all of a sudden the blinders come off and everything seems to be more of a panoramic vision and starts to make more sense. But it took some time.
When someone goes in, like you went in, you were in your mid-20s?
Yep.
So how is it that for guys that are in, because 16 years later, how is it that guys are maintaining their fitness standard, physical conditioning? Is that standard maintained the same, or it's like the standard to get in is this? You were able to kind of peak for this event that you had a loose idea as to what it was,
yeah,
or sorry, what it was going to be, and now that is somewhat different, and there's kind of an appreciation that you wind up having seasoned operators that bring something more than just, being able to run a mile in 5.5 minutes sort of
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah. The standard is the standard. And, to get in there, everyone needs to be able to run well. Right? And we use that as an analogy. That's a good example, actually. The standard to get in, the fitness standard is mile and a half or 2.4 kilometers in 9:45 or less. That's the minimum standard. So everyone needs to be able to do that, to even get there to try out. And then on selection, those who are good runners, for example, they will have a slight advantage. Those who struggle to run doesn't mean that they're not going to complete, because they do. There's lots of living proof of guys walking in uniform doing the job right now who are not good runners, but they were able to meet the standard and perform optimally. And then once you become an assaulter, the expectation on the assaulter as a professional is to be able to do your job. So the fitness level, I would say, would vary between assaulter and assaulter. The reality is we have a standard that needs to be met every single year: a shooting standard, a fitness standard, etc. These standards still need to be held at a pretty high level, but it's more job specific. So those standard evaluations that get run every year, it's a job specific evaluation. So less about running a mile and a half, less about bench press or sit-ups and push-ups. It's more job specific. So being able to move your body while wearing 55 pounds of gear plus a long gun, while navigating stairs, while carrying dummies a certain distance, while climbing caving ladders, this is all very job specific. So the test evaluation is different. Therefore, what guys, the professionalism on the individual, what they know is they need to be able to do the job well. But if that means less running because they're just not a naturally good runner, that's okay, because they can do their job. But to get in, there's definitely a standard that needs to be met. And that's what's unique about the organization, is no matter what else you might bring to the table, you still need to meet that standard. You still need to come in at a baseline level. That way, everybody that walks through that door successfully, they went through the same pipeline. There's no discrepancies, or there's no accommodations for one person's physical ability or another. So male, female, it doesn't matter. If you happen to be, 5'6" and 150 pounds versus, 6'4" and 250 pounds, doesn't matter. The standard is the standard.
Running could be easier for one of those.
Yeah, it could be. Sorry, if you want, you can just hit the side of that button there. I forgot to put it on mute.
Is that the haka?
Yeah, yes it is. Thanks. My bad. You'll be able to edit that out a little bit.
Oh, easy. So when is it? I lost my train of thought. So for physical fitness standard, you were saying that minimum someone needs to go through and get their 945.
Yeah.
Minimum they need to be able to do this, and then later on it's just how it is that they're doing their job.
That's right.
And are you suited for that?
That's right.
And I would assume that like the demands for someone in a precision marksmanship type of role to be able to hike in the backcountry, probably a little more rucking than running sort of thing.
Right.
How is it with, you had talked earlier about that you essentially have, that 72 hours or less, right, where you're going to get the call and this happens, and then you're going to a place to do a thing, and I'll see you in a bit.
Yeah.
So how is that you're actually, or guys are able to maintain a level of fitness, kind of while they're in the field? Because, there's stories about guys losing 40, 50 pounds just from a combination of calories and stress and terrain and stuff like that. So to go through and to stay in that shape while you're on that type of deployment schedule, what are some of the strategies that are being used for that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Depending on the environment that one would be deployed in, obviously access to a gym may be, problematic. But guys are, professional enough, and they understand enough about overall physical fitness where literally if they were, seconded to the space of what we would see in a typical hotel room, they will find ways to, run the stairs, do push-ups, burpees, whatever they can, whatever they have access to keep themselves physically fit. So what I find really cool about the guys that I've had the opportunity to work with is they're all professional, and they know hanging out and playing video games and eating ding dongs and ho-hos is not going to help them do their job. So they take the onus on them. They're not waiting to be told what to do. They will, read the environment based on what they have, and they will apply what they have access to. So they're very creative and they're very proactive, whether it's fitness related or otherwise, even if it's something that's a capability enhancement, for example. Guys are very proactive. If they see an opportunity to exploit a capability that has a hole in it, they will figure out how to plug that hole. So that's what I really kind of miss the most about operating in that organization, is how proactive and how operationally focused the guys are. Like, everybody's looking for ways to get a little bit sharper, a little bit fitter, a little bit better, a little bit, smoother or more optimal with recovery. And it's a cultural thing.
It would have to be.
Yeah.
What was the thing that you hated about it? What was the thing that it cost you? Because nothing's free.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah.
Like,
That's a good question.
It's really easy to look at things like this as very romantic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, right?
Yeah.
How was it on your family?
Tough.
Were you able to have a family?
Yeah.
How many divorces, stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's a big one. I chose to wait kind of late in life to get married. So I've been married to my wife now for 10 years. And, for the majority of my time at the unit, I was single and sassy and loving life. I wasn't really tied to any. I had, I think, one, maybe two kind of long-term relationships while I was at the unit. But for the most part, it was, I was honest with every woman that I met. And I said, listen, I'm not around much. So if you're okay with that and you've got your own thing going on, then we're going to do all right. But if you need a 9-to-5-er, you need a guy that's home every night, I'm not that guy. So I was very upfront and clear at the very beginning. And some of those women were open to it. Like, hey, okay, no problem. We'll see how this goes. And then after 6 months or 7 months, they're like, wow, you are really not home very often. So I think the biggest sacrifice and what a lot of guys go through is the frictions at home, because there is a lot of demand and there's a lot of expectation from them at the unit. The guys that do well managing that, I think when they leave work, and then they shift gears and they devote themselves to their family, and they'll find ways to work through it. And then there's been situations where, not a lot of guys, but a handful of guys that have gone through some, pretty ugly separations and some, I would say devastating divorces, where they lost access to their kids, or now they're living with their buddy and they're just trying to cope through those stressors. What people don't realize is, while they're dealing with that home life issue, things that are happening at the unit, they continue to go on, right? So there's no like, oh, we're gonna pause and we'll let you sort this out. It's like, we'll support you, we want to help you, and we'll give you the support that's required. However, this thing and that thing and the other thing are still going, and they still need the attention of the guys at the unit. So I would say that the hardest thing for a lot of guys is managing the tempo. The tempo is unrelentless. It is unrelenting. It's relentless. It's a challenge for sure.
Would you say that's probably the thing that washes most guys out, or burns them out? Burnout,
yeah. I would say, like, things are getting a lot smarter. We're all getting a lot smarter with PTSI and occupational stress and what that really is. I don't necessarily think that guys are suffering from an episode of PTSI, for example. I think.
What is PTSI?
PTSI is what's, I think, the new term for post-traumatic stress injury.
Injury? Okay.
Injury versus disorder.
Okay.
So they're an injured individual, like we would get the common cold, where they need some time and they'll come back and they'll be back into the fold. So the injury, I think, is a more flavorful word rather than saying a disorder.
Sure.
So I think that's changed over the last couple of years. But my point is, I do think that some guys will go through speed wobbles depending on how many years they spend at the unit, and that's just it's chronic, right? It's a chronic amount of pressure to sustain this skill, that skill, the other thing, while managing your home life, while managing the operational requirements at the unit. And that, over time, will burn guys out for sure. What's the solution to that? I think from a very strategic top level, there needs to be a comfort level to say no. Like, our organization would say yes to everything. We need a group of guys to do this. Yep, we'll do it. We need a group of guys to do this. Yep, we'll do it. Well, you only have so many people. The tasks start to pile up. And the reality is you don't have enough people to go around. So at some point, having that top cover to say, no, not right now. Maybe 6 months from now or maybe next year, but right now we're just not. Not that we can't, we're choosing not to, right? We're choosing not to because we need to give the guys some time at home, or we need to give the guys some time to recover. Or, guys that are, living with a torn rotator cuff, and they find ways to manage it, but what they need is 6 to 12 months to get the surgery and to recover properly. But they continue to say, no, I can push through. One more tour. Yeah, no problem. I can push through. One more deployment. Yeah, no problem. I can push through. Well, at what time is the right time to get this thing sorted out? It's tough when you only have so many people with the capabilities that they have that need to be deployed in a variety of different places across the globe. At some point, the higher echelon of the military establishment, as well as the political understanding, is a hard no needs to be pitched every now and again, which I don't think happens.
How did you manage the stress and the tempo?
I was, fortunate, lucky, or it's the life that I chose. When I wasn't at the unit, either operating, deployed, or on some sort of training cycle, then I was in the gym training MMA, because MMA was, a passion of mine. It still is. So that was my outlet. So for years, I would literally leave work. I would go to the gym, train until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and I would do that literally 5 days a week. And that was my outlet. Yeah, was there a consequence to that? Because as you suggested earlier, and I agree with you, there was a cost for sure. The cost was my body got broken down. I had 2 knee surgeries. I had both of my shoulders reconstructed surgery over the years. And, is that because of the job? Is that because of MMA? I believe it's a combination of the both, where
2 blown knees, 2 blown shoulders. You're a beast, bro.
And it was just go. But from a mental perspective, that's what I needed, and that was my outlet. Right? So when I was dealing with something that was work related, as soon as I left the unit, I would literally look in the rearview mirror and be like, I'll see you tomorrow. And then I would switch it off. Right? So when I left the unit, I literally left it, like mentally, physically, and emotionally, left the unit behind. And then in the morning, I'd show up and look at the sign, welcome to JTF 2. And I would look at it. And I did this. This was my routine every day. I'd drive by and like, welcome back. Right? So I'd be able to flip that switch. And now it's work related. I'd leave work, MMA related. And that was my outlet. That's how I dealt with it.
Did you find that you were able to have friends outside of that lifestyle? Mm. And if so, how difficult was that?
That's a really good question. I lost a lot of friends along the years at the unit for 2 reasons. Guys at the unit who, I absolutely love and respect, of course they'd reach out and be like, hey, we're going here. You want to hang out? We'll get the families together. We'll go for a barbecue, go for a pint. And oftentimes they're like, sorry, man, I gotta go to the gym. I gotta go train. So those phone calls start to become less and less. Those text messages become less and less. Not because I didn't want to hang out, but because I often said, sorry, man, I can't. I got to go do this. And then similarly, I had a lot of close, tight friends. And I still have, on both entities, I still have a lot of close friends in the MMA world, but it was very similar. Guys would reach out, hey, we're going here for, a couple of pints or a party or an outing. And I avoided that. Like I didn't take to that social scene of partying and drinking, because I knew I had to do my job and be clear-headed the next day. So I lost friends along the way on both sides because of the no's and the sacrifices. So I sacrificed his friendship within the work environment with my insulter community because I was constantly at the gym. I sacrificed his friendships at the gym because after training at the gym, it would not be uncommon that they're going out for a pint or doing whatever. And I would say, no, I got to be clear-headed to do this thing or that thing. So yeah, I lost friends along the way, but what was highlighting, and it still is today, I've got a smaller nucleus of friends, but they're true friends. They're friends that I know I could call at any time of the day and say, hey man, I need a hand with this, and they'd be there like that, right? So is the sacrifice worth the reward? In my opinion, it is, because now I have a tighter group of friends who I absolutely love and I know I can depend on.
Did you see a lot of, like, working the areas that I have, I've seen a lot of people lose everything to self-medicating, whether going through divorces or kind of whatever, right? And so it's not uncommon with police, emergency services, military, stuff like you were doing, where people start going through, and it's just a beer after work or whatever it is. Did you wind up seeing a different type of way that was dealt with and different culture of that at JTF too?
Yeah, there's definitely, alcohol it'd be unfair to say that it's not part of the culture, for sure. Have a couple of pints, after a good operation, have a couple of pints when things are shitty. And it's a learned behavior, right? It's like an association. Hey, we're getting together, we're going to have a pint. Not often you say, hey, let's get together and go have an apple juice, right? So it becomes a known behavior. It's a learned behavior. Where I would say one needs to be cautious is when 1 becomes 2 becomes 12, right? At what point are we crossing the line of escaping or trying to numbing something that maybe we're suppressing or truly not dealing with? So yeah, I've seen it. At JTF2, the guys that I hung out with, it would be not uncommon, and we get together for a couple pints or whatever. For sure, that was very cultural and very normal, right? My exposure to law enforcement guys that I've been providing training for over the last little while, it's very similar culture. After a hard day of training, have a couple pints, shoot the shit, get to know each other a little bit. I think it's a good thing. I'm not suggesting for a second that it's not, because it allows guys to kind of deregulate and just relax a little bit and open up a little bit. And sometimes we would be exposed to some really deep conversations. And I do believe, that 1 or 2 pints to just take the edge off, it did help guys want to be a little bit more open. So yeah, I've seen it. I think it's not a bad thing as long as we're aware of like how much is too much and what is that number for one person that might be a different number for somebody else.
Shifting gears a little bit, what types of things were people selected for that weren't just physical capability, right? Like back in the day, they talked about, with the RCMP, if you weren't over 6 foot and over 200 pounds, you weren't getting the job.
Right.
Right. And so obviously with JTF2, that's not the case, but there is a certain, you need to be able to run fast, and you need to be a cock-strong country boy. But beyond that, what else?
Yeah, the biggest one is like on selection, what are they truly assessing for without giving anything up on how it runs and what happens on day 1 or day 2. But at the end of the day, what they're assessing for is, are you teachable? Like there are attributes that are, important and have value with some organizations that might be a little bit different than others. But, being a good team guy, being able to persevere through tough times, being able to critically think, most importantly, being able to adapt to a situation that you may not have all the information. In fact, on purpose, you won't have all the information, but being able to adapt to what's being asked of you and being able to perform optimally with self-motivation. So not waiting to be told what to do. You just see the thing that needs to be done and go do it. So I think that's the big one that some people overlook, where preparing for selection, some people are under the onus, well, I just have to be really physically fit and I'll gut my way through it. That is inaccurate. You need to perform. You need to be able to think critically. And then the other side of it is the opposite. Well, I'm really calm under pressure, and I've dealt with a lot of adversity in the past, so I'm going to use that to my advantage. So I'm not going to focus so much on the physical attributes. And that's going to bite you in the ass as well. So there is a healthy balance, and I would say arguably probably 50-50. So 50-50 what's going on between the ears, and 50-50 can you physically do that thing that's expected.
What sport have you seen transfer over into getting through the initial week of selection? Is it university level wrestler, right, with a combination of the athleticism and a physical grind, the mental toughness that comes from that? Is it a rugby player, right? Like out of people, because nobody's going to walk on having sat on a couch their entire life and just decide a year before that this is going to be what I do. Yeah,
agreed. I think the guys that do really well, they have a healthy background of athleticism, not necessarily one specific sport, but they're well versed in a variety of different motor patterns, right? So like somebody, for an example, that only played rugby, and you're going to have some stuff for sure that others do not. But any one singular sport is repetitive motions and motor patterns. So that can be a good thing. In selection, I think that could be a deficit, because your body is used to moving in certain ways through repetitive motion. I think guys that come from more colorful background of athleticism, maybe they've done a little bit of gymnastics, CrossFit, hockey, football, soccer, basketball. Those are the guys that I have seen do really well on selection from an athletic perspective, right? So they move well, flexibility is pretty good, stability in their shoulders and hip is pretty good. Those guys tend to do a little bit better than a singular sport individual.
What is it that you do now?
Physically?
No, because you're not still in, or you wouldn't be talking to me.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. So now I run a business called Direct Action. So Direct Action is a business that provides training for military, law enforcement, other government agencies, but as well I have a side junk for the general public. And essentially there's firearms training that I'll provide, CQB or CQC as it's referred to, which is how to move inside of a structure, and then defensive tactics or combative self-defense as it's sometimes referred to. What I think makes the company unique is what I put a lot of heart, soul, sweat, and exercise into is blending those three elements. So tactical shooting with CQB and defensive tactics, how to put all of that together, and being able to troubleshoot problems where the solution to a chaotic situation might be a ballistic response, i.e. a well-aimed shot between the lookers. In some situations, that might not be the most viable option. Maybe it's going hands-on to control an individual. So what I've done with the system and the program and how I'm rolling this out to military and law enforcement and other folks that are interested is making them think and giving them options. So that's essentially what I'm doing day to day, and I love it.
And where can people find you?
I've got a DA YouTube channel, so Direct Action Combat. You can find me on Instagram, same thing, Direct Action Combat. Or if people want to send me a personal message, email is probably the most optimal way. I just find the device is constantly going off, and oftentimes I just got to put that on silent mode because it becomes a bit much. But Randy at directactions.ca is probably the most efficient, most optimal way to get a hold of me.
Do you want to talk about your project you got coming up?
Yes,
on in June,
yes. Let's talk about it. I'm excited for sure. So the Ultimate Fighting Championship. This gentleman named Rokas. He's based out of Lithuania. He's done 2 seasons in the past, and season 3, the capturing of the content will happen in June. So I'm going to fly to Lithuania amongst myself and 7 other competitors. And there are scenarios that are created. Each competitor goes through these scenarios that are generated to challenge your ability to self-defend, whether that's against an edged weapon or in some sort of maybe verbal altercation. There are situations that are presented. Each competitor goes through it, and then he's scored on the actions that were taken. And then at the end of it, whoever the champion is or whatever will get a belt or get some sort of high five or whatever it is. And then he will then potentially defend the belt on the next iteration. So I'm looking forward to it. Should be pretty cool.
It's gonna be a hoot.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for sure. When we connected probably about 2 or 3 months ago, a gentleman named Rokas, he's explaining how it works, and I didn't know a lot about it, to be honest, because it's a YouTube channel, so it's not on television, it's not televised yet, but I think it'll probably get some legs at some point. So I watched a few episodes, and man, I lit right up thinking this is my bread and butter. Like, this is not only what I teach and what I train on a consistent basis, but this is where I thrive the most, is in those chaotic situations where sometimes you're throwing elbows, and another time you're trying to communicate and de-escalate a situation. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a pretty cool experience.
What 3 books would you recommend everyone read?
Oh, such a good question. One for sure, I would recommend anybody read it. It's called Legacy, and I think the gentleman's name is Brian Kerr, I think. So the book is called Legacy, and it's all about the success and the culture of the All Blacks. So the New Zealand All Blacks rugby team. So for folks that don't know, they have the most winning record in all professional sports. So the most successful team in terms of wins, losses in all professional sports. There's got to be a reason behind that, right? As you think about it. So this book is all about the culture. It's all about how, whether you're the most junior guy in the team, in the organization, or the most senior guy, they do everything together. So they win together, they lose together. They sweep the floors together. They do everything together. And from a cultural perspective, what they have going on with the New Zealand All Blacks, this book really highlights why they're so successful. And at the end of the day, and it's in the book multiple times, what they talk about is whoever comes into our circle, no dickheads. And they say it often, so many times throughout the book. At the end of the day, no dickheads. You got to earn your keep day in and day out. And at the end of the day, if you're an asshole, you got to go. So it's pretty cool. That's a good book, Legacy. You asked for 3, right? 2 more. 2 more. Another one is Gift of Fear.
Gavin de Becker.
Gavin de Becker. Yeah, great book. Great book. All about, situational awareness, actions on in a real life situation. What are the consequences from not just a physical altercation that could lead to self-injury, but then what are the potential civil or legal ramifications of doing a certain thing in a country that you're living. I think it's a really good book for folks that are interested. Gift of Fear, Gavin de Becker. One more. Oh man, there's so many good books.
What are you reading right now?
Right now I'm reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography. Yeah, so it's about halfway through that. It's a pretty interesting book so far, just talking about his struggles from coming from Austria and then becoming the governor, movie star, etc. So it's pretty good so far. I like reading stuff that's real. I'm not a fiction type book. So if there's a lesson learned or somebody's story, with anecdotes and examples of things that they've lived through for real, I really like those types of books. David Grossman's two books that he wrote, both of them are really good, On Killing and On Combat, both really, really good books as well. There's lots out there for sure, but yeah, they are. Arnold Schwarzenegger is the one I'm reading right now.
What advice would you go back and give your 18-year-old self, knowing everything you know now?
Yeah, I would say I'd give 2 pieces of advice. One from a physical perspective and one from a mental perspective. Any opportunity. So if I was talking to myself at age 25, any opportunity to have a meaningful conversation with somebody that's a decade older than you, listen. They have experiences that we have not yet experienced. So pay attention and listen. They may have something really valuable that could be implemented today. So I'd say 10 years older than you, shut up and listen, because they're probably going to share some experiences and some life experience that could be beneficial. So I would say that's from a mental side.
I love that.
Physical side, I would say the advice I would give my 25-year-old self would be more is not always the most optimal answer. And so I did not give myself proper time to adequately recover. I think some of the injuries that I sustained was for a lack of quality recovery. So I would say train hard for sure. I fully believe in redlining. Every workout you should be gasping for breath for sure. But then the consequence to that is if we do it day in and day out, multiple times a day, there's no time for recovery. The body can only sustain so much before things start breaking down. It's kind of like a Formula One race car. Formula One race car rips around the track at 300 kilometers an hour, and then what happens before the next race? It gets tore down and rebuilt, right? So it's important that recovery piece, if you want to operate and perform like a Formula One race car, you treat it like such. Put good fuel in, recover when it's required, and hit the throttle when it's needed.
What's your, are you on the ice bath train? Is it hot yoga?
Yeah, hot yoga. I have a sauna in my house, so I use the sauna 2 or 3 times a week, so infrared sauna. And then I'm not a cold plunge type of guy, only because it's not efficient. It's not an efficient way to set it up, ensure that the ice is what it is. Now, if you have something that is on a computer or whatever, and you can sustain the temperature, sure, I'd probably have that set up. But I just turn the cold shower on. So I feel it works the same. In fact, from a mental perspective, I think it's even tougher, because you have the option to kind of, when the cold water is hitting you under the shower, you have the option to kind of cheat it a little bit. So many parts of your body are under the water, right? So I find it from a mental perspective equally beneficial, but tougher to do. So I'll go from the sauna, flip the switch on the shower, and it's ice cold. So that point where you get under the water and it takes your breath away, then you got to stay there. So being able to sustain that for 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 minutes. So that's what I use. Not saying that I'm against a cold tub for sure. I just find where we're living and how it's situated, it's just not as optimal to get that set up properly.
Last question I'm going to ask you. What was the biggest adjustment for you and the thing that you struggled the most with coming out of a very high pace, dynamic, cool guy lifestyle to not doing that anymore? How did you manage that? And what advice would you give to somebody else?
The biggest challenge was after leaving a environment and a culture for over a decade with highly motivated, highly trained, highly professional, like high professionals. The hardest challenge was not expecting that with everybody else that I was now interacting with. So finding a way to not judge people and also not judge myself, that took some time because I had a high expectation. If I was dealing with a new group of civilian friends, for example, you know, what I was used to is if they said they were going to be there at 3:00, they're there probably at 2:55. Where some of my civilian friends, and I'm not casting shade, it's just a reality. You know, to them, 3:00 is like 3-ish, right? So like I respect people's time. I try my best to be on time. If somebody comes in there to train with me and they paid for an hour, I give them an hour, you know, from beginning to end. That way they have other things to do. Like life goes on. If I'm robbing them of their time with me, they may see that as a benefit, but I see that as I'm robbing you from spending time with your family right now or taking care of that email that needs to be taken care of. So I think the transition for me was just accepting that everyone's trying their best. I believe that. I think everyone is trying their best. Everyone's best is going to be different than the person to the left and to the right. So just accept that what you have and who they are is who they are. What I'm trying to do is influence a positive change. So if I can give them a nugget that will help them see something from a little bit different angle, to me, that's a success, right? That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create a positive environment that is, you know, it's a learning environment, but it's a challenging environment where there's just no high fives and gimmies just for showing up. Like you earn it. Everything we get, we earn. We work for it. So I guess the transition for me was not everybody in this world is a high performer in a stressful situation. That's just not reality. Some people perform well under stress. Some people don't. So my job is to bridge the gap. People that think that they can do something, I want to show them that they can do it. Right? So the advice that I would give is, you know, maybe setting boundaries, like what is acceptable, what isn't. Like, here's the boundary. Be clear and communicate that clearly. Like, this is what is okay. Everything inside of this is great. Anything outside, not here. Not with me. You can do that somewhere else, but not here. So I guess being clear with boundaries and expectations. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
We will make sure that there are links to all Randy's stuff. You can find them below. This is going to be up on YouTube, so you're probably watching this on YouTube now. And then we'll also go through and have links to those books on Amazon, so you can go and check them out.
Awesome.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.